Hey, welcome back to my garden. Today I'm working on our three sisters bed. So the three sisters are corn, beans, and squash. Originally, when we first built it, or when we first built this bed, it was a little too early to start any of those. So we started off with lettuce, and we kind of have the last of it now. We had either 12 or 18 planted, I can't remember, but it was kind of way too much. We had no idea that once you cut it, it just grows back. We thought that we would be harvesting it and then that would kind of be it. So it was a fun learning experience. And then it got really hot, so it all started to bolt. So that's basically when it starts to grow tall and start to flower. And it kind of makes the leaves taste bitter, so you can't really eat it after, or you can. We've still been eating it, but it's not like quite as amazing as it was right at the beginning. So I wanted to try to use the lettuce that hasn't quite bolted. And what I'm going to do today is cut the tips of it off and then see if I can propagate them. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these six here. And then as I'm doing this, I'm going to remove the bottom leaves because we just need enough leaves that it can still make itself some energy, but not so much that it's losing too much moisture because then they'll kind of wilt and flop. And although I haven't tried this before, I'm pretty sure it's going to work because early on in the season, the dogs jumped up and knocked over some of the lettuce and completely decapitated it. And we just like plugged it right back into the ground and then it grew roots and became like this big lettuce head. So I'm pretty sure that they know what they're doing. So as I'm taking these apart, I'm just going to put them into some moist soil. And it's the same mix that I've used in the bed and then just water them in. And I'm going to leave them in the plastic tupper just to keep the humidity up, especially the first few days. I'm not going to put them in the greenhouse because it's too hot this time of year, but I'm going to put them somewhere where they can get some morning light and then shade the rest of the day, and that should keep them happy. So for the corn, we first sowed it the beginning of May. So it's been almost 2 months. It's about, I don't know, 2 to 3 feet tall. And then we sowed the beans, I think about 3 weeks ago. And then those ones, they're still pretty short now. They're maybe 12 inches, and they should start kind of clambering up the corn pretty soon. So for today, I have two things that I want to add. One is I want to plant more corn. So the corn takes about 3 months to be ready. So this in theory could be ready by the end of July. And I thought that if I sowed some today, then that should be ready kind of near the end of September when our weather's normally still nice. And you need to plant it in a grid because it's wind pollinated. So what I was thinking was basically in the gap between the current rows of corn, planting a new row of corn. And the one that we're using is Golden Bantam. We had attempted it last year and it was kind of a disaster. We didn't have the beds yet and the bunnies kept eating them. So it was just like, yeah, it didn't work. But so far, so good this year. So that's the first one. So I'm basically just going to poke some holes into the ground about 8 inches apart. I'm just going to match the gaps that I did for these ones and then just sprinkle in the corn. I'm doing one each. The pack says to do two and then thin out, but with these ones we had almost 100% germination, so I don't want to like waste the extra kernels if I don't need to. And then once those are in the ground, I'm just going to fill in the holes and then give it some water, and then that should be good to go. And then the other one is the pumpkin. So the variety that we have is mus. I'm gonna have to look it up, and I'll add it to the screen because it was something in French, and I don't want to butcher it. Musc d'hiver de Provence or something like that. Anyway, so for that one, I was thinking on the far end of the bed, just adding two, and then that can start to scramble its way through the bed and keep the soil a little bit shaded with those big leaves. And then the pumpkins are supposed to be really good eating pumpkins too, so I'm excited to try those. And then kind of the same with the pumpkin. You would just want to make sure you're planting the seeds kind of skinny side down, because if you lie them flat, sometimes apparently they can rot. So just on an angle so that the excess water can um, just like wick away. And then at the head of the bed, I forgot to mention earlier, we call them Stephen's beans. They're beans that my brother sent from Greece. And there's some kind of Greek variety of runner bean, and they're called giants, so I guess they grow pretty big. Already they're to the top of the trellis, and they have these really pretty red flowers. So already it looks cool, and I'm excited to try the actual beans as well. All right, so now everybody's tucked in and watered in. We just have to wait and see what happens. For the corn, I'm not going to fertilize it or anything. I'm just going to keep it watered. And I generally try to do stuff in lines so that as it's coming up, you know for sure that it's what you planted and not just a weed. Because sometimes some of the grasses, we've even had like irises try to come up, and they might look a little bit like the corn, I guess. I'm not going to fertilize the new ones because I just want to focus on like doing their roots, and it's a pretty rich compost mix that we have anyway. For the growing corn, we use our compost tea that we've been experimenting with. So we do a mix of seaweed compost tea and then our homemade nettle compost tea. And we'll try and do a video on that soon because it's actually pretty fun. But yeah, everybody's all set here. So we're just going to keep an eye on them, keep it weeded around where we sowed, keep them nice and moist. And then I'll keep you posted on those lettuces too. If they root successfully, we'll either plant them back into this one or into one of the other beds that we have a little more room. But thanks for joining me in the garden, and I'll see you next time.